The funding of companies has been a rocky road lately. In the venture space, money has been hard to come by and valuations have been all over the place. Today, we're talking with Drew Spaventa, CEO and founder of the Spaventa Group, about what it is like building a mid to late stage VC firm. Drew is a Forbes Finance Council member and a principal member of the Metaverse Standards Forum. So we're going to find out what he looks for in the companies he invests in and what sectors he finds compelling. Welcome, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris and Sandesh. It's good to see you guys, and glad to be here, as always.
Excited to talk to you. It's been really interesting. The venture market has been a wild, bumpy ride.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. You must be living under a rock because things are going amazing.
It's just amazing, and just people are getting these incredible valuation, and money's just flowing like crazy, right? So on that point, we've certainly seen a lot of strange behavior out of that market. What are you seeing in the venture market these days?
Just pure, I wouldn't say pure insanity. Let's not take it crazy and just being a little
more than the regular insanity.
But more than a regular insanity. I think per the last time, we're pretty much going to pick up from what we spoke to last time. But ultimately, it was a much needed, I guess, correction, right? Out of the insane valuations that we've seen over the last 10 years. And there's been a lot leading up to that. And it's easy for me, I gotta say. I haven't built a $10-20 billion behemoth. My firm does pretty darn well. I don't know what it's like to build, a software company from nothing to a $20 billion valuation. That being said, you come to realize now that many of those companies really weren't $20 billion valuation type companies, when you're focusing just on top line growth. But it's good to see that, a lot of these executives and business leaders, it's time from go to, adolescence to adulthood. And what I mean by that, that's a perfect analogy of, hey, listen, how about we start focusing on the bottom line? It's one of those things, what I've been telling people and clients, hey, listen, the way my approach is at this point is, if you're looking at an opportunity, obviously where your stage is, but especially in the mid to late stage, will you allocate your capital into this company if you couldn't sell it and you could only live off cash flows? That changes the dynamic of your approach to investing quite a bit, where you realize, oh, okay, am I investing in this company just to, get a 2, 3, 4, 5x X amount of years down the road? Or is this company actually going to eventually turn a profit, generate cash flow, and hopefully once there is a liquidity event and go public, some years down the road, actually provide a dividend for me? Right. So, having that dynamic, and obviously that's an oversimplification, but just having that approach kind of really makes you look at these investment opportunities in a different light.
What do you think was driving, because we did see some companies that, had barely made a sale and, they're like a $8 billion valuation all of a sudden. What do you see what was the mechanism that drove that? And what was the dynamic that caused that to change? And is that just you kind of indicated that's kind of a correction, getting to where it should be. But is this like a short-term correction? Is this a long-term correction? Is this going to be the new normal?
I think it depends on what industry. Generative artificial intelligence. I think
that's going to be
there's going to be we're seeing it right now. There's a ton of money being thrown out. So pretty much, human beings never learn their lesson, and we have very, very short-term memory. Everything
yes, we do.
Everything will affect you for 30 days, and anything beyond 30 days. Wait, what? What happened? So we don't seem to learn our lesson ever. But right. I think there's a combination of variables that led to these valuations that were not warranted for a lot of these companies, going from right. the early 2010s to the late 2010s. I think a combination of easy monetary policy, all this VC money just being thrown around like crazy, all these crazy valuations that we're seeing all of a sudden in companies. Look at FTX. I mean, obviously, FTX is an outlier because we all know what the end game there is happening. Not every company is committing fraud, but let's just use them as an example. Prior to the discovery that they were committing fraud, they've been around for 3 years and were valued in the private market at $30 billion. I got approached to invest in FTX at a $30 billion valuation.
Oh my God.
And I'm not going to preach that, hey, listen,
you must feel like a genius right now, not having
I was like, the reason why I said, listen, there has to be, meat left on the bone, even though I'm a mid to late stage investor through one of our subsidiaries. There has to be meat left on the bone for my LPs to make a return on their investment. And at this point, at a $30 billion valuation, I didn't find anything they're doing is specifically different. We already had a vested interest in another crypto exchange, and we already were investors in Coinbase several years ago. But it's just one of those things where, you have to sit back and say, okay, what warrants the valuation for this company?
Yeah.
As you dig in further, listen, let's call it what it is. There are some companies out there that when you're an early stage investor, you could strike when the iron's hot. And then as the company grows, listen, let me offload my position to some other sucker in the secondary market or to the IPO. So, and mind you, I've definitely made mistakes in my career, and I'm going to continue to make mistakes, but I'm definitely have a very disciplined approach, and I take my emotion out of it where, I'll pay attention to a specific industry, but especially in the mid to late stage, I care more about what the company is doing, the specific company, and care less about the industry they're in and looking at the success that they're having, So
Right.
I think, again, human beings don't learn their lesson. Some industries, they're going to be more particular about where they put the capital. I think capital efficiency is going to matter most, like fintech, for example. But obviously, as certain industries come about, generative artificial intelligence, whatever it is, genetic engineering, let's just say asteroid mining becomes a thing, and we actually see that there's potential to mine minerals and, possibly become the world's, again, just money's going to be thrown out, because that's the dirty little secret is people really don't know. And the people that you see all over CNBC and Bloomberg and all the media outlets, those are individuals that, and not to take away from anybody's success whatsoever, but you look at the tip of the iceberg, right? That old motivational poster where, here's what people see and they don't see anything underneath. But when you have these VC firms allocating capital across, 100 names, 200 names, everybody's going to focus on the winners, right? So again, it comes down to the fact that human beings don't learn their lesson.
And you mentioned like FTX and companies like that. One of the things it seems like like Elizabeth Holmes just got
Theranos, yeah,
her whole insanity, her insane situation sort of caught up with her. But that you're like we're talking about. There's a lot of money going into these companies, insane valuations, and it seems that along with that, when you put more money into things, you get more bad behavior too. I mean, we're seeing. A lot, and I think we saw this during the first .com crash too. There's just a lot of really bad behavior, and here we are again. We're seeing a lot of companies that are just fraud, and like you mentioned the crypto market. The crypto market's rife with fraud, right? So do you think that that's turning away investors, and do you think they're that's that old adage escape to value? Do you think that they're looking for better value in the companies they're investing in, or how do you think that's working?
I think FOMO, fear of missing out, and human emotion. I'm very, running a financial services firm with different methods of compensation and different characters, I guess, it really is a unique experience into human nature. Not only am I seeing people, some individuals within an organization that have no salary whatsoever, so it's pretty much eat what you kill. Then there's individuals with salary. You see that dynamic there. You have some individuals that have, how they manage their clients on our financial planning front, or how they manage their LPs on our asset management front. So I'm always constantly taking in how these individuals make decisions, what makes them tick, whether it's from the personnel within my organization or down to our clients. When I was a registered representative myself, and I was dealing with clients for anywhere from individuals worth, several $100,000 that are investing a very small amount to tens of millions to hundreds of millions, So, but the common dynamic that I think across everybody, for the majority, whether you're very poor or you're ultra wealthy, is always letting your emotions get the best of you, right? So I think there's, and mind you, there's definitely individuals that are extremely disciplined in their approach. But per your point to specifically crypto, there's this whole fear of missing out or finding the next best thing. And sometimes it's not even just about putting my money in here so I can make an investment. Especially when you get into the more accredited, it's more of I made this investment, and it becomes a bragging right. to a certain extent. Here's what I put my capital on. I was right about this. So I think you just have a lot of money being thrown out because everybody's expecting, Bitcoin to replace gold, which I don't see anytime soon. I don't.
That's like,
I even if it becomes a thing. But again, you have all these people and you hear generative AI and everybody says, I want a piece, I want a piece, I want a piece. And it's at that point where I think the best thing to do, and it's always cliche, but I've learned it. I'm only 30, going to be 37 in a few weeks. So I'm relatively young to a few, very old to many, but at the same point, it's
very young to me.
Yeah, well, I think it's crazy how the most simple lessons and the most cliche lessons are the right ones. And people just never tend to forget as time goes on. And going back to the investing thing, it's just, you got to be disciplined and patient. And while everybody's jumping, it's okay to jump as well, but you got to take a stand back and look what's going on before you decide to get in. Either that or you got to lead the way.
Yeah, you're getting into a little bit of something that Chris and I have been talking about for a long time, which is the actual entrepreneur themselves. We look at the people, the idea, the market, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the founders matter. And you made the comment that you're really looking at how they are making decisions as they're building these companies. So can you give me a little idea of when you are meeting a founder, what are you looking for that would compel you to invest, and what would be a detractor?
As far as the mid to late stage arena, I'm not meeting founders face to face. There's a few that I've spoken to. Other than that, I'm either speaking with people directly in contact with them. That being said, especially years ago when I was working for an investment firm where I was speaking with CEOs of companies, all, small caps, anywhere between 50 million to, the largest one was about $3 billion. Understanding that dynamic, right? So as whether it's a founder or, a CEO of a company that's been around for 100 years, let's use the term leader, I guess, the leader of an organization. Yeah. What separates a leader of an organization, whether it's a small business or, a multi-billion-dollar company that's going to buy into the fact that that person's going to succeed or that team's going to succeed to the ones that they don't? What do we look for? And that's the thing. I wrote an article today and I was literally it's crazy how the world works that we're having a conversation with this because you guys didn't even tell me what you planned on speaking about. You wrote some bullets, but that question was not on it. And I had this conversation with our chief marketing officer, Dana, earlier today. And I said, I'm borderline obsessed with what makes certain people successful. Coming from my background, single parent, right. My dad wasn't around. I know what Americanized I always say Americanized poverty, not poverty, Americanized poverty. Because I don't care who it is in this country, the worst person, the single person out of 350 million people, the one person who has it the worst out of 350 million people in America has it better than several hundred million people across in other parts of the world. So that's why I call it Americanized poverty. But I said I'm always curious on what makes people tick. And I found that if you look at things at face value, there could be people that are leaders or founders, how you said, Sandesh, that okay, they have a $5 billion company or a $20 billion company. They're successful. That's the person that we follow. But the unique thing is that there are prominent people that have success with this one endeavor. And then after that, they start side endeavors. So they do this or this, and they flame out. And I hate to say luck because I don't think it's luck, but I think there's a combination of passion that has to be incorporated in it, stoicism to a certain extent, ingenuity. I think ingenuity is a huge thing in combination with resourcefulness and the ability to have a vision and get a team to support you across that common goal. Not an easy thing to do. And that to me is true leadership, right? That's what I want to buy into. And the best, I always bring up this example, and it was a company that was worth in the public markets about 30 million. It wasn't, a large company by any means. Ever since then, it's tripled in size. But I remember speaking to the CEO, and I hear all this stuff in the background. And I've interviewed over 100 CEOs that working for this investment firm. We're going to invest in you, blah, blah, blah. And he was the only one where I hear something in the background. And I asked him, I said, oh, okay. And I'm a very direct guy. I said, we having a party back there? Or are we actually discussing your company? And he said, no, I'm sorry, I'm on the floor. Kind of reminded me of Elon Musk a little bit. He goes, listen, I'm hardly in my office. I need to be in the grind with what's going on, knowing what's going on. I need my team, because we're not a large company. I need my team to know that I'm in the trenches with them. I have a picture over here that says, on the top, it says boss, and it has a Spartan leader pointing and his soldiers pulling him. And underneath it says leader, and the Spartan soldiers pulling his soldiers. And it reminds me of that man. And his company wound up appreciating over, and market cap over $100 million. And they actually started executing in a large way. So I hope I wasn't too tangential there, and I hope I answered your question. But I think it really comes down to having a conversation with somebody, and just the culmination of conversations and interactions, really just going with your gut on whether you think this person's going to execute. Because you could look at a market and all the quantitative statistics that you want, but I think Steve Jobs said it best when he said that most of the time people don't know what the hell they want. And if people don't know what they want, you could solve a specific pain point. But I think, and I truly believe, that there's markets out there that could literally be created just by you having some ingenuity and figuring out some contrarian idea that people don't even think that they needed. And all of a sudden you provide a market for it and created it yourself.
Yeah, we had one guy who said to us once that, I didn't even know I had a problem until I saw the solution.
These entrepreneurs out there, the more and more Chris and I talk to them, it's the ego seems to play a big role in many of these startups. And so when I dig into that a little bit, I'm trying to figure out, why is this person starting this company? Are they starting it because they want the fame? Do they want the money? Is it all driven by the monetary benefit, or is it driven by the purpose and the vision, and to really truly build something? And to truly build something, like you said, you have to get in the trenches. You're wearing every single hat in the company. And I don't think people always see that. They see, co-founder, CEO on LinkedIn, and they're thinking they're just, putting out demands, and people are just, pulling this thing together. It doesn't work like that.
No.
Every single day you got 5-6 new problems with maybe 1 or 2 things that went well that day.
Yeah.
And so it really takes a special kind of human being, especially when you said the leadership comment that you made. Chris and I talk about this all the time. Where's all the good leaders? Where are the people that what you just described is exactly the leader that Chris and I are always looking for? Those are hard to find. Yeah, because when you do get into those leadership ranks, that ego comes in again, and it really comes down to, what is your purpose here? What is your sense of duty here? Is it just to look at the bottom line, or are you trying to build something special?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. So I'm in the unique position where everybody that works in my organization has a business within a business. You're managing people's money. That's how traditionally it works. And there's certain things where you have to be traditional still, but edgy at the same time. That's what I look to do. Like, we have to be innovative, but we also can't, reinvent the wheel to a certain extent. So I also have to be the cheerleader to everybody out there. And I'm constantly, and no matter, I've also learned you could bring a horse to water, you can't force it to drink. But I have to be the best version of myself, because it starts with me. So I could get the best version, whether it's reciprocated or not. I have to do my best. But it's something that I preach to everybody as well. Listen, we're in a cutthroat, excruciatingly difficult business. It's not, and I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal saying I'm better than anybody. But, listen, if you want to have a conversation about selling software and scaling a software company, or convincing people to hand you their money on a day in, day out, and 90% of the time, 95% of the time, 99% of the time, getting told F off, it's not easy. So I tell everybody, knowing the adversity that you faced in this business, but knowing the reward is there, it can't be about money. It has to be about money to a certain extent, because the money that you can make in financial services could allow you to provide a life that most people can only dream of, but you need a reason to get out of bed, no matter what that reason is. Because if you don't, when tough times arrive, whether you're in financial services, and speaking exclusively for the entrepreneur, when you start a business, it's not all rainbows, gumdrops, and unicorns. 95% of the time it's going to be high. I could be honest with you, and I'm very transparent. Half the time I don't even know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm still here. Right. I'm still here and scaling. Yeah. But you need that vision and be obsessed with that vision, because when the time gets tough, when you're low on capital, when the whole world shuts down 3 years ago, you need something that's still going to get you out of bed to fight, fight. Because if you don't have that fight in you, eventually you're going to falter. And that's why I tell my organization, aside from your materialistic pleasures and your personal achievements, put a picture, adorn your wall with material things that you want to accomplish, personal things you want to accomplish, as well as other things that are extremely powerful. Your spouse, your children, because
Yes.
if the going gets tough to a point that you feel like giving up, if you can't look in the eyes of I don't have kids, but I could only imagine, if you look in the eyes of your kids and that doesn't inspire you to fight for everything you have, you got bigger problems than I could even, rectify for you. Yeah, that's on you.
Yeah. There's an article that just came out today, actually. So it's interesting that we're having this conversation. And I'll send you the link, Chris, so you can put it in the notes if you'd like. But it was by Fortune magazine. And it says, the title of it is, "The symptoms of high functioning depression are dangerously subtle. How to recognize them." And here it says, in one survey, 72% of founders reported feeling concerned about their mental well-being.
I feel similarly concerned about their mental well-being.
I'm putting two hands up on that one.
Entrepreneurs also experience high rates of depression, 30%, and substance use conditions, 12%. I just think that speaks to just the absolute challenge in the market to find these people that are willing to go build something, given all the things that we started the conversation on. Capital is tough to get. The financial markets are super complicated right now. Going IPO or anything like that is going to be really, really tough. So when I look at the market, the sad part to me is that this is what we really need right now is the innovation. This is the time to innovate. The world is changing so quickly. Our way to get out, fix a lot of these problems is going to be through innovation. Do you have any comments on what areas are you seeing in the market where outside of generative AI that is going to help shape the world for the next 2-3 decades?
Generative AI is all sexy and nice. Electric vehicles are all sexy and nice. Obviously, we're transitioning into that. It's really exciting that we're on the cusp of getting to explore space, how that's going to be monetized. I mean, obviously, the easy answer is, asteroid mining, minerals, going to Mars, have fun with that.
That's like an order of magnitude, a different kind of investment too, because you start talking about minerals off of asteroids, it's trillions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, right. At least for space, we're starting. 3D printing companies exist to say, hey, listen, we could go to the moon, 3D print on the moon. Going to Mars. Right. Have fun with Mars. It's not happening in our lifetime. I don't know. Even if we get there, okay, we got other problems on this planet that we got to fix before worrying about what the hell we're doing on Mars. Blockchain obviously has huge potential. Chris and I had a conversation that it has huge potential, but not to the point that we think that it's going to be extremely defining to a certain extent. But to answer your question, nothing. The issue that I have, and I'm sitting here, and there's certain times where I have to, I ask myself, all right, you have to realize where you fit in best. I'm the money guy. My firm's worth just over 8 figures at this point. Not small, but not large. And we've only been around for, barely 2.5 years. Second firm, by the way. Another lesson in human nature. So at 37, I'm hopeful that I keep on the grind within the next 10 years. I have a name for myself where we could actually get to a point where we could deploy capital to solve some of the larger issues. So what are the larger issues that I don't see that do need innovation? Healthcare. It's one of those things where if I'm walking down the street and it happens every once in a while where you have the CEO of OpenAI or anybody in generative AI itself, and I don't want to isolate somebody, that's why I just said anybody in generative AI, where on one hand they're saying we got to worry about the repercussions of artificial intelligence. Okay, then why keep on doing what you're doing? If it's that big of a deal, why keep on doing what you're doing? All right. I get that there's a good use case and you have to, but if it's really that much of an issue and you consistently say you're scared, then stop. Let's call it what it is. You want to monetize it to a certain extent. You want to make deals. You want to grow. Okay, no big deal. But everybody's focused on software. Why? Because it's easily scalable, right? Artificial intelligence, any type of business model that's easily scalable that you could create a monopoly off of. Well, we're all focusing on this. What about the little girl that's walking down the street that has no arms or can't see? or the little boy that can't hear? What about MS, diabetes, cancer? What are we doing about all that? You're telling me with all the technological BS that we've been able to accomplish, we can't divert our efforts into innovation in the health industry? Because there's an age-old saying that says, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And I agree 100%.
True.
What about our infrastructure? Look what they're doing in Dubai. I've never been to Dubai, but I see what's going on in Dubai. I can't go on, I live on Long Island, New York. I can't drive. They just fixed the expressway a couple of months ago after 6 months of playing a video game and getting 40%, the people's salary, 40% of it is spent on rent or home ownership. Shelter. No wonder.
Yeah.
There's other issues that even if you want a generative AI, you figure it out, and now we have generative artificial intelligence. Now we could go to Mars, and now we have electric vehicles everywhere. Okay, well, you're not really fixing the problem, are you? So I think per your point there, I think ego has a lot to do with it. And that's coming from a guy that named the company after himself, which I could get into the reasons why in a little bit. But
the titular Spaventa Group,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but, I know one thing that we were talking about before that's, because I agree with you. Healthcare is a really interesting, biosciences is a really, really interesting space. And I think in particular, there's been some really interesting advancements around aging too, which are going to be
that is true.
An interesting part. But, going back to earlier, what Sandesh was saying about a lot of these founders and, there's a mental health crisis. And I think that doesn't just extend to entrepreneurs. I think when I look at this country in particular, and I look around, I see a lot of people in a mental health crisis, right? And one of the things that has shown tremendous promise on that front is something that we were talking about earlier that you're kind of getting interested in investing in, and that's the psychedelics market. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit about what kind of investment opportunities you're looking for there?
Yeah, I mean, I know ketamine is being used quite extensively now. I'm very interested in something that's extremely risky, and that's, psilocybin and LSD.
Right.
I just started conversations about making potential, and I'm not going to pull the trigger for a little bit. I have to further build out, my network of individuals, because everybody has a hot idea, and further educate myself about the industry. Mm-hmm. But I think there's definitely promise in there, and the studies that have been done so far have shown good results when it comes to mental illness, especially if I'm not mistaken, veterans, PTSD.
Yeah, like PTSD.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alternative medicine has gotten a lot more popular over the last few years, and I'm planning on doing it. I re-upped my passport, haven't been able to go, but I should come within the next few weeks, and most likely by the end of the summer, I will be in Peru at an ayahuasca retreat, because that's also a thing too. Anything that I invest in, I have to try myself. To a certain extent, I've invested in a particular space company, so I'm not going to try it myself. I'm not going into a spaceship and going to blast it out to space. So there's a certain level of things that I'm not going to try myself. But, gaming and certain things that, all right, I have to try it myself. Investing in alternative food, I'm trying it myself, because you have to engulf yourself in the mind of the consumer as well. So, psychedelics, a lot of people should know that many tech CEOs microdose. I've tried microdosing. It does help. And I could say that somebody like mental illness on my father's side of the family runs pretty prominent, depression and everything like that. And I've had my moments. My team could tell you that I'm as bipolar as they come. I really am. But I do a good job.
Seems like an advantage in the market you're in.
Maybe, but I'm I hold it together. I don't buck under pressure to a certain extent. But it's like, when everything's fine and we're just status quo, that's when I start going crazy. So, and unfortunately, even on a personal level, because of my family background, that's a reason why I do not want to have kids. And I understand, nature versus nurture, but there's a genetic thing that encompasses it. So that's why psychedelics have been on my list, because, listen, part of me feels that in this country, which I don't care who you are, no country's perfect, but out of any country on this planet to live in, I think this is the country to be in. So part of me feels that, why is mental illness a thing? People should know how good they have it, this, that, and the other thing. But in a grander scheme of things, it is a thing. It really, truly is a thing. I can't imagine not having control of your mind, and whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, depression, having control, at least you always have, if you have something else, but you have control of your mind, you have control to a certain extent. But if you can't mentally get it straight, I think that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, because how can you live like that? You know, it's
Right.
and
It's a terrifying prospect. I mean, I worry about those sorts of things all the time as I get older, you know, because I mean, in some regards, you know, now I'm 57 years old. I do feel like, you know, I'm not quite as, you know, fast as I used to be. Maybe,
Right.
you know, I got a lot of clutter in the head that I got to sort through before I get an answer out.
Well, there's a lot of education to be done there too. I mean, scientists are still trying to define what is consciousness and unconsciousness, right? So these are things that we never really thought about before. We never used words like stress. I'm stressed out today. You know, we didn't do that two decades ago, but now it's a real thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was pretty stressed out 2 decades ago.
Not like you are today.
Yeah, I was a growing teenager, so yeah, I was totally stressed out. Listening to 90s rock grunge, burying my life into Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots.
Where's the Spaventa Group going? Like, what's next for Spaventa Group?
Focusing on our mid to late stage VC opportunities, but in addition to that, we've been really scaling our financial services division. So the TSG, which is the moniker we use, or the acronym, I should say, short for the Spaventa Group, easier to pronounce, I guess.
Right.
You know, encompassing our financial services arm, we have 3 different entities, 3 different divisions. You know, we have the asset management side, which we manage private investment funds, which is where the mid to late stage VC investing comes from. We have our financial planning division, and then we have our insurance division. So as we continue to scale, where we're starting to experiment with generative AI to incorporate, to enhance our client experience, but we still have to make the focal point that human touch, but we also want to bridge the human touch with technology. So as we continue to scale, we're going to be focusing more on the financial planning front. We're looking to start getting into other assets, be innovative in that regard. We're looking at a bunch of cool things to do on the real estate front. The only thing is we have to risk our own capital before we start putting our client capital involved as well. So we do have some exciting stuff on the horizon, but, you know, as such, you know, circling all the way back to where we started, you know, that's finding the right people, getting the quality in here, you know, making sure that everybody adheres to our culture, what we're looking to, and a part of our overarching vision. That's the whole goal.
Well, that's awesome. So if people wanted to find you, where should they go?
TSGinvest.com. All our social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube is at TSG Invest. So anything TSG Invest, you can find us.
All right, and I'll put a link in the show notes. Well, Drew, it's been awesome talking to you. It's you know, it sounds like a really tricky market, and you know, but fun to navigate and investigate all these cool companies and put your money in things that you're excited about and you believe. So, you know, congratulations on building your company, and looking forward to see where you go from here.
Awesome, man. I hope you guys have me back.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, please click on that subscribe button, hit that like button, do all those things that help the channel. And I will see you in the next one.